All right, Malpal, one more thing that we're going to do today, and I kind of precursed this earlier, but if you're just now joining us, we're going to take this as our chips and dip, our appetizer into what some of our Thursday shows will look like. For those of you who are just joining us, every year after the college football season, we start doing college football post-mortems where we go into each of the 12 FBS programs and we hardcore break down every part of their program, and we do a different one each week, and so we'll make our way through those. So before we get there, we do want to kind of put a bow on the end of the season and wrap out the 6 Texas college football teams that made it into a bowl game. All of those have elapsed. We don't have anyone in the national championship, so we're just going to kind of go through, do a quick run through of scores and break down kind of the winning games, and then we'll kind of set you up for our postmortems that will start on Thursday. So Malpal, what do we have up first?
Up first, we're gonna kind of go in order of when each bowl game, and I do want to point out 8 Texas teams actually were eligible for a bowl game. However, Texas A&M and SMU were unable to play due to COVID issues, but we're going to recap the rest of them, the rest 6. So up first, we're going to do the New Mexico Bowl, Fresno State beating UTEP 31-24. And I just want to give a quick shout out to UTEP. We all love UTEP, and they've had such a great season. This was the first time that they actually made a bowl game or participated in the postseason since 2014. So,
wow.
And they actually came into this game as an 11-point underdog. So they definitely covered the spread. Hey, good teams cover the spread.
Great teams covered the spread, baby.
Absolutely. And so, it was close. It was a pretty close game all the way through. UTEP had a disastrous fumble on their last possession of the game, of course, ending the game, so unable to. And I think this game actually played the last day of state championships.
Yeah,
so I had it on my computer watching it just to kind of follow along while also watching I don't remember which one it was. It was 6A game, I'm sure, but I was just like, there's too much going on right now. I can't do this.
Yeah, and then obviously I think Jacob Cowing is leaving UTEP now, but I mean, what a season
Crazy
that he had, what he was able to do, and Dana Dimmel, you would have loved to put a bow on the season and to be able to win a bowl game. But for this UTEP program that we were wondering, is Dana Dimmel on the hot seat? All that stuff, for them to even make a bowl game was huge. And they played a really competitive game here. 31-24 is nothing to hang your hat at. No. Great job, UTEP.
Up next, we will do the first of the Frisco Bowls. There's 2 of them, if you remember. The Tropical Smoothie Cafe Frisco Bowl. San Diego State beating UTSA 38-24. And I think that this was just too much for UTSA too fast. And they had just a remarkable season. They only had 1 regular season loss, of course, to UNT that last regular season. And they cap it off with a conference championship win over Western Kentucky. So really, it was a great season for UTSA. I just really think that it was just too much too fast for this team, but they'll definitely be back. They're on the come up for sure.
Oh yeah. Frank Harris had a really good game in this one. He threw the 1 interception, which obviously hurt when it got down to that time. But it was it was one of those things. They're down at halftime. You're hoping that they can turn it around, come back a little bit, and realistically, I mean, in the second half, they just started kind of.
There were just too many mistakes
It was too many mistakes. They couldn't get the defensive line to really stop and be able to stop that rushing attack, and it just kind of got away from them slowly but surely. So a disappointing way to end this great season, but...
Right, and not to mention the guy that they've relied on all year, Sincere McCormick, their running back, of course, opted out, for the draft, of course.
Which never helps. But
No, of course not. But, what are you going to do? You're still going to play, and you're still going to try your best.
Absolutely, yeah.
Up next, we are going to go on to the second of the Frisco Bowls. Not really called a bowl. It's only the Frisco Football Classic.
Sure.
Miami, Ohio defeating North Texas 27-14. And I don't have much to say about this game. We played a great first quarter. North Texas played a great first quarter. I believe they jumped out first. And then it was just...
You can't go scoreless
They
in the
were just
second half.
outsized. Yeah, you can't. You can't. And they had, so in that second quarter, they had Austin Ani threw 2 interceptions, which just it's just a mental game at that point.
Right.
You really can't come out of that. And, of course, Miami, Ohio got the ball at half and they scored that touchdown on the first possession of the second half and really just rolled with it there and kept going. And North Texas just couldn't move the ball at all.
You had the momentum, and then you go down right at halftime. So, it's 2014, and you're going, okay, hey, take a deep breath. Let's recollect ourselves. And then they just got shut out. I mean, the time of possession in the second half was awful. They just let Miami of Ohio run all over them. They couldn't get anything going offensively. North Texas is going to have to figure out their quarterback situation. Austin Aune did a good job running the ball in the first half, but the second half was just, they kind of laid down and looked like there was no game plan, which if you've watched Seth Luttrell's career, which obviously I think that he saved his career in the latter half of the season to get them to this bowl game, but if you're taking a look just at his bowl game scenario, he has never won a bowl game.
Yeah.
And it's always because they play fine in the first half, and then the second half, it looks like they haven't played football before.
Yeah.
So it was just another North Texas bowl game. You made it in, and you cap it off with just a disappointing loss.
Right. Which is really, it is disappointing because you're wanting to cap out that heck of a season that they ended up pulling together. You know, they went on a 5-0 run towards the end of the season, one of those beating ranked UTSA at the time.
Yeah.
You're
going
going
all the
into
momentum
this,
in the world.
You're going into this Miami, Ohio game with a lot of momentum, and then
it's basically a home game.
Right, and then they let these mistakes that they make early on determine the rest of the game, which has really been the story for them all year.
Yeah,
so.
there's a lot. We'll get into it, but I'm going to tell you now, they got to figure out a quarterback situation.
Yeah. Up next, this one was a little shocking. Honestly, I think Ish and I debated on this one quite a bit when we did our bowl breakdown a couple weeks ago, but the Birmingham Bowl, Houston pulls out the win over SEC opponent Auburn 17-13. And I remember talking to Ish about this one. I was like, I don't know if Houston can compete with an SEC team. None other, especially Auburn.
Right.
And Ish brought up the point like, oh, well, in a couple of years, they're going to be a Power 5. Houston's going to be a Power 5 team. They're going to join the Big 12 in a couple of years. And this was a kind of surprising game to me. It was a very, defense-heavy game. The final score, 17-13. So it really came down to those final big stops that Houston was able to pull out.
Yeah, first off, offensively, the connection between Clayton Tune and Nathaniel Dell was spectacular all game. I mean, that 150 yards receiving for Dell and Clayton Tune had a great game. He threw the one pick, but 283 yards in the air. Ultimate Caskell had a good game, almost 100 yards of rushing. But here's the stat that I think got looked over that everyone. They held Auburn to 4 and 15 on third down conversions.
Yeah.
That's huge.
They could not move the ball.
No, and it was one of those things. This was a team that we were looking at the beginning of the year after they lost to Tech and going, what a loss of a season this is going to be. And they turned it around. But that defense really, really stepped up in this game.
Yeah.
And, I was pleasantly surprised. And that's one of those things. It's a bowl game. You don't need style points at that point. You're not trying to make it. They weren't trying to make it into the playoff. They weren't trying to do any of that. 17-13, you rounded off, only allowing four third down conversions. Good on you, Houston.
This was a game where the offense didn't have to do much to win. It was really all about the defense in this game, and they kudos to them. They really stopped a pretty good Auburn team.
Oh yeah,
that I think
absolutely. There was nothing. And anytime you can stop an SEC opponent, that's reason to puff your chest out, you know?
Right. It looks good for recruiting, too. Down in that Houston area, I think really they're going to be able to start pulling and competing with teams like Texas A&M and Texas down in
you're
that.
Fixing to be in the Big 12, you know?
Exactly. This is a statement win for this, even though it's only just a bowl game and it happened early on. This is really, I think, a statement win for this Houston program all around.
Completely agree.
Up next, we have the Liberty Bowl. This one was I don't have no words for this one. I can't even pull words together to describe this one.
The Joey McGuire effect.
God, Texas Tech just completely destroys Mississippi State 34-7. And it's funny when you look at this score, you're like, man, Texas Tech must have jumped out early and just kept scoring, and maybe Mississippi State scores, in the last couple minutes of the game when Texas Tech has their starters out. But no, the score at halftime was 13-7.
Yeah.
So Texas Tech jumped out the second half and just completely took full control on both sides of the ball and to win this bowl game. And it was a fantastic statement win for Texas Tech as well.
This may be me just making up conspiracy theories over here, your local conspiracy theory girl. But this, to me, when you watch the way that they came out in the second half, that felt like they were playing for Sonny Cumbie.
Yeah. You're absolutely right.
I mean, they know he stayed. I think it was a big credit to Joey saying, you know what? No, I'm gonna sit back. I'm gonna let y'all finish your season. I'm gonna cheer. I'll be your biggest cheerleader, but I'm not gonna come in and try and take over. Sonny Cumbie had this offense figured out. He stepped in when they needed him most. They won the next game after Matt Wells had been fired. He walks in with the big old chain on him. You know, it was like, I feel like he was like, hey guys, there's a lot of assistant coaches that are leaving too. It was kind of this group's last chance to play together, play as a family, and it felt like they took that and just ran for it. And like I said, obviously the rushing attack was unbelievable for Texas Tech. Who thought that we would ever have been saying those words? But I mean, they had two guys go for, a combined average of just over 100 yards, and it was like, I just felt like Sonny Cumbie, Joey McGuire, I don't know who it was, but came in and said, hey, guys, this is my I think it's got to be Cumbie. This is my last chance as a Red Raider. Let's go out there and do it. And, I mean, they just came out like a bat out of hell in the second half.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this defense, this was Mississippi State had not scored more, or I guess, what am I trying to say? Mississippi State, this is the lowest point deficit that Mississippi State has been held to all year. So huge statement for this Texas Tech defense.
This is a Mississippi team that beat A&M earlier this year.
Absolutely. And we saw them kind of getting ready, Texas Tech, when they played, I guess it was Oklahoma State, and their defense looked really good. And I was telling people, I was like, this Tech defense I think is pretty good, and especially towards the end of the season when the whole Joey McGuire news came out, and now their offense couldn't quite get rolling. But we were talking about if this defense can come in and hold this high-flying, really fast-moving Mississippi State offense.
Yeah, us talking about a good Texas Tech defense is like, go home, college football, you're drunk.
Right. It's basically a replica of Mississippi State's. Right. It should be, like a replica of Mississippi State's team, but it's not, All right, moving on to our last matchup. It was the Sugar Bowl. Yeah. Baylor beating Ole Miss 21-7. And I just want to come out and say this first. I don't want to take anything away from this Baylor win because it was just an incredible win. Baylor's defense, as always, just really looked
They were such a good unit, man.
They just looked stout. They looked like they knew what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And I have to throw it out there, of course, star quarterback Matt Corral got hurt during the first quarter. It does. It really does. And especially when there was all this talk about him opting out, but he wanted to finish out the season with his guys because he's all about loyalty and stuff. And then you see him get hurt in the first quarter.
Yeah. Literally the internet exploded about the morning of.
Right. It did hurt to see that. And then they throw their freshman backup quarterback in there, and
kid can sling it a little bit.
He can sling it,
but that's a big stage.
Right, it's a big stage for a guy that I don't think he had started all year. Now I haven't followed Ole Miss football as much, but that was, if I had to bet, that was probably his first start all season, and to do it against a Baylor defense like that,
right?
They just couldn't get anything going. Ole Miss, of course, their only touchdown that they scored was a defensive touchdown. I believe it was a pick six, but really just a fantastic win for Baylor.
Right. Yeah, it absolutely. It stunk for everyone. Just a neutral college football fan to see that happen, because this had a chance to be a really back and forth, really good game. It kind of slowed down the momentum, I felt like, because then, to be honest, the game was pretty boring. I mean, until late into the fourth quarter, it was kind of like, okay, the meme of the stick figure, like, do something, know, like that's kind of what it felt like. But that takes nothing away from, Abram Smith had 26 carries for 177 yards. That kid lit up. And so a super, super successful season for the Bears, kind of coming out with a huge New Year's Six bowl game win. Very excited to see them. And we'll get into that program, but talk about a program that will have like good things to say about. The Bears are going to be one of them, and what they did to go finish out that game and handle through adversity and all of that it's been spectacular.
Absolutely.
All right, Malpal, I think that does it. There's our recap of the college football teams in the state of Texas that played in bowl games. Like we said, SMU and Texas A&M were bowl eligible, but due to COVID-19 protocols, they were not able to play their 2 bowl games, so their season have officially come to an end. But that was just kind of our chips and dip. We will continue as the offseason goes on to break down, and I mean really in-depth, every phase of the ball, break down these college football programs. But for now, there's a little recap and kind of the bow on the end of the season.
Hey, thanks for watching this clip here on YouTube. If you like this kind of stuff and you want more of it, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And remember, you can watch us live every weekday at noon at TexasFootball.com, Facebook, Twitch, or here on YouTube. And if you want more of the best coverage of football in the state of Texas, check out TexasFootball.com and become a Dave Campbell's Texas Football Insider at TexasFootball.com/subscribe.